Welcome to Carpool Chats, a podcast brought to you by the Fuels Institute.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Carpool Chats. I'm John Eichberg with the Fuels Institute, and today we're going to talk about energy prices. And we're recording at the end of October, and that's important because if you've been watching the news towards the end of 2021, you know that energy prices are up. Oil prices, gas prices, natural gas prices, not just in the U.S., but across the globe. And we want to discover and talk about a little bit how that's affecting consumers. So we got a good friend of mine, David Holt. He's the president of the Consumer Energy Alliance, and we're going to talk about how it affects not just families, but also business consumers. So David, welcome to Carpool Chats.
Hey John, good to see you.
So for those in the audience who don't know what CEA is, I'm on the board, but you're probably the best person to explain what does the Consumer Energy Alliance do? What does it stand for? What's the purpose?
Yeah. CEA is a 16-year-old national trade association, more like a civic club. Anybody that's interested in energy policy, environment policy, where we're getting our energy, affordable priced energy, reliable energy, and that environmentally responsible energy, excuse me, join CEA. So we advocate for sensible energy policies across the country, made up of farmers and manufacturers and small businesses and IT professionals and hospitals and transportation and all energy resources. Nuclear, wind, solar, hydro, oil, natural gas. And really this collective voice comes together to say, okay, these are the impacts and the implications on families and small businesses, like you mentioned. And how can we do a better job as a nation? How can we meet our energy challenges in a responsible way?
And I think it's important. One of the things I like about being on the board is the fact that it's an advocacy organization, but it's not partisan. Right. It really is all about sound policies that protect consumers on the energy front, and that's critical. It really doesn't fall on party lines. And so, you look at the situation today, and some people are pointing, it's the president's fault gas prices are up. It's just a complete fallacy. It's not the president's fault gas prices are up. There's a whole bunch of things. So CEA deals with not just transportation energy. Clearly, Fuels Institute, we're focused on transportation. Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about the oil markets. What is going on? Last year, oil dropped to negative on the trading in West Texas Intermediate, and now we're back up records in the last 4 or 5 years in the mid 80s, closing in the 90s. Some projections that we may get above $100 again. What's going on? What is CEA looking at?
And you and I will disagree a little bit. Policy does impact energy prices also.
Okay, I agree.
But it doesn't mean it's a Republican or Democratic issue, right? Both parties have made some mistakes with regard to energy policy. Both parties have done some good things with regard to energy policy. It's our job, Fuels Institute, everyone else, to try to put a good lens on the best policies moving forward and how can we achieve our shared goals, break down these party divisions. I mean, everything is so partisan today. If there's one thing that should be nonpartisan, as you mentioned, it's energy policy because – and we'll get into this, but it's ubiquitous. It's not just filling up your car or your truck with fuel. And not just flipping your light switch and hoping the lights come on or your house is heated in the winter or cool in the summer. It's packaging for food and it's carpeting and it's wallpaper and paint and shoes and clothes and every component that goes into a car, all the components that go into your smartphone. So all those things matter. And how we set policy to kind of achieve those shared goals is really important. So long way of getting back to your question on what the heck is going on. A lot of it's COVID, right? We're in a historically unique period of time. The world literally shut down for months and months and months. And now we're starting to dig ourselves back out. You're seeing more economic activity, consumers who have been frustrated not being able to get out and do things or getting out and doing more stuff. That's creating not just an energy supply situation. It's created here in the United States and elsewhere, this supply chain situation that we're seeing everywhere. So it's just kind of that just-in-time mentality that markets have adapted because of kind of our ability to see better what the market's demanding when there's this historic change and this kind of whipsaw as the economy's coming back. It's affecting everything. So with natural gas supplies being where they are, with oil supplies being where they are, the economy coming back, there's a increased demand and supply has to catch up with demand. But then you have little things that send market signals like the Keystone Pipeline that was denied. You have a federal leasing for oil and gas pause that occurred. You've had some situations where you don't have sufficient redundant power. So every time you have wind and solar for electricity, you have to have backup power for when the wind is not blowing and the sun is not shining. So making sure we have that so that when those situations occur, natural gas is available or nuclear is available to meet that ongoing demand. Demand doesn't stop. So you've got to create that redundancy. So all those things kind of play into it a little bit. The United States is in a wonderful situation because we have so many natural resources. We have great ingenuity. We have great technology. We're really diversifying our energy economy. But we have been the number one oil and natural gas producer in the world for a period of time. Now we're increasingly relying on natural gas from Russia, which is probably not a situation we want to be in because we have so much natural gas here at home. So we need, from a policy perspective, to send signals to the market that we're serious about energy diversity, we're serious about our environmental performance, but we're serious about meeting our energy needs globally and here in the United States with energy that we can access readily, responsibly, and increasingly environmentally responsibly. Every barrel of oil and every molecule of natural gas produced here at home is the cleanest in the world. We can't forget that. It's the cleanest in the world. So when I say we're relying more and more from Russia, that's not meeting the same environmental performance standards that we would have here at home. So that's, we got to keep that in the back of our mind. It's got to be affordable. It's got to be reliable. It's got to be environmentally responsible. But we can't put our families, we can't put our small businesses in this situation where they're going to spend potentially $13.5 billion more this winter because of high energy prices. That's a drain on the economy at a time that we cannot afford another drain on the economy.
You mentioned market signals, and I was asked to do a presentation a couple of weeks ago, and they asked me to talk about the impact of COVID and pandemic on transportation. I put together the presentation, started digging into some things I hadn't dug into in a while. And if you look at travel, when we had the stay-at-home orders hit in April, travel dropped almost 50%. Gasoline demand dropped 50%. Oil prices went to negative, as I mentioned before. But that didn't last very long. Even though people were at home, not going to work, they didn't stay at home. And transportation recovered pretty quickly to pre-pandemic levels, and demand for fuel recovered. But we didn't increase production. And some people may ask, oil is at $85 a barrel. Why aren't we producing more? And my preparation for that presentation led me to this conclusion. And I throw this out there. If I'm in the oil business, what incentive do I have to produce more? One, I got kicked in the gut last year, lost a ton of money, and now I'm recovering that money because oil prices recovered. And you want me to produce more oil, but the governments in the world are telling me that my product is persona non grata. I've taken a look at it. The countries that have announced their intent to ban the sale of combustion engine vehicles represent more than 50% of the global auto market. Where is the incentive for an oil company or a natural gas company to produce more when their governments across the globe are saying, we don't want your product anymore? I mean, how do we balance this pursuit for reducing carbon emissions, which agree we need to do, but at the same time, we have to make sure that we're providing energy, affordable energy to consumers. You take a look at some of the headlines in the last couple of weeks, countries who have made strong commitments to climate are reversing trend and encouraging more fossil fuel use because the economic reality is significant.
I mean, that's the great question of our time, right? So it comes down to, and again, we're both going to be nonpartisan about this, but there are some in government and elsewhere in society and kind of these more activist fringe groups that say the only way we can achieve our environmental goals, our climate change goals, is the outright ban of fossil energy, the outright ban of the internal combustion engine. That, my friend, as you well know, is an absolute myth. It's a fallacy. It's a lie. It can't be done. I mean, when I say the word myth, I mean it in every sense of the word. That is a myth. And we need to get past that conversation where it's this zero-sum game. The only way is to ban new startups of natural gas in homes. We're going to electrify everything. Well, it just moves the molecule down the line just a little bit. We're not going to be able to meet our economic goals, our goals for folks that live at the poverty level, that are living on fixed incomes, that can't afford $3.50 gasoline, that can't afford to pay $2,500 more a year for electricity. So the answer has got to be, how do we continue to deliver affordable and reliable energy using all resources that meets environmental goals that we set? So because the United States is the only nation on earth that's very close to already meeting the Paris Accord models, because the United States has reduced CO2 emissions in the last 20 years by 20%, because we are literally leading the world in environmental performance at the same time that we also produced more oil and natural gas here in the United States than we ever have before, was all-time record on environmental performance. So that, when you talk about U.S. leadership, it can't be, nor it shouldn't be, okay, how can the U.S. lead in banning fossil energy? No, the answer for COP26 needs to be, look at what the United States is doing, China. Look at what the United States is doing, Russia. You guys need to raise and elevate your game to meet your energy needs at the same time you're meeting your environmental performance needs.
Everything you just said about how the United States is leading, and I've looked at the numbers too. And a year or so ago, I wrote a piece about, we have reduced our emissions. I think we're back to 1995 levels, whatever it is. We've done amazing things, but you don't hear about that. Why are we not promoting that as a country, saying, look, we are leading? Everything you read is United States is a laggard. United States is the second largest carbon emitter in the world. The United States needs to do more. We need to do more. We're not doing enough. We are the ones leading the charge, yet we're getting no credit for it whatsoever on the international stage. And I keep scratching my head. Why is that the case? Why are we not being viewed as the leader? Why are we keep looking at Europe as the leaders? When we're doing more than they are. It is
one of the great untold stories of our time. It's the media doesn't do a good job. The United States doesn't do a very good job from a governmental standpoint of kind of, pounding our chest a little bit. It's really kind of a bully pulpit that we should be using to cajole the rest of the world, because there's only so much the United States can do without absolutely wrecking the economy. And the first people that are hurt are those folks that are on the line of energy justice, right? The folks in the poverty level, inner city, fixed incomes, people that literally cannot afford to do this. So we hear about environmental justice a lot. There's also an energy justice aspect to all this, and we need to make sure that our leadership is transmitted to the rest of the world. And it's so frustrating. I share your frustration that why isn't this story out? For example, I'll give you a great example. There's a list of the high emitting urban centers in the world, and the top 25 are 23 of them are the major cities in China. Yep. Another one is Moscow. Another one is Tokyo, Japan. The United States is nowhere on that list. These top 25 urban cities produce 52% of the world's urban carbon emissions. The population of those 25 cities or so is about 285 million people. United States is about 350 million people. So it's about 2/3 the size of the United States. It's producing 52% of the carbon in the world. The conversation has to start there, not start with, okay, here's the United States and we're going to do more. We can do more. We are going to do more. We've got a great plan, ingenuity. The market is really responding. The United States consumer wants cleaner energy. So we're heading in a really good direction. We already have a really good track record, but unless we cajole, force, embarrass these 25 cities, and there's a lot more to do more to reduce their CO2 output, to improve their environmental performance across the board, we're not going to get there. So protecting our families, protecting businesses, the price of bacon because of energy is now doubled. It's like I talked about.
And that's a travesty, man, because bacon is the best food in the world.
It should be the great bacon revolt of 2021.
It really should be the bacon bill, right? But I'm going to put an "and" on one of your statements. You said American consumers want clean energy, and affordable energy.
Yeah.
And that's where I think I would hate to be a politician right now. I'd hate to be a politician anytime, man. I've got my issues, but I'm not that tainted. But think about it. You're in office. You're ran on a platform of addressing the climate crisis that's facing the world. And so you're pushing an agenda to clean the environment. And all of a sudden, oil prices creep up. And now your constituency, possibly the disadvantaged communities, the rural communities, the lower income communities who are looking to the government to help them out, they're getting hammered. Now, on one side, you go high gas prices. That's going to make more environmentally sensitive vehicles like electric vehicles more cost competitive on a faster basis. Maybe they'll sell EVs faster, result in less tailpipe emissions faster. But at the same time, we get a regressive tax, for lack of a better term, affecting lower income communities. And those lower income consumers can't afford a new car, let alone a new electric vehicle. So you've got this teeter-totter, this rock and a hard place, and all of a sudden you've got your head right in between it. What do you do? I mean, what's the choice of a leader to say, okay, we need to do something differently here? Because unfortunately, I think the whole climate discussion has created a us, them.
Yep.
And the answer has to be in the middle.
Yep.
Environmental protection and economic reliability are not mutually exclusive terms, yet we've created a scenario, or others have created a scenario where you can't talk about economics and environment in the same sentence because you're talking about corporate economy. No, we're talking about family budgets here. We're talking about livelihoods, access, and mobility. We can't sacrifice that. We have to find the balance. And I'm so frustrated because it doesn't seem like there's an effort among the leaders of the world to balance the two priorities, which is protect the environment, protect consumers. If we put those two things first, we can do great things. But when we start saying you can't do both because one's going to compromise the other, then we're in a situation we're in today.
Listen, you have my vote. So when you decide to run,
if nominated, I will not run. If elected, I will not serve.
We are drafting the Eichberger movement right now. Draft Eichberger. And we need more political wherewithal that follows exactly what you just described. So, and it also ultimately starts with the voter. There's no voter in 21st century America that should vote for a politician that says, I'm going to ban X energy resource. I'm going to restrict Y energy resource. It's all about removing fossil energy to meet our environmental goals. That is a myth. That is only going to make the situation worse. We've got to understand.
It fits into a nice soundbite. It's
pandering. It's not true. It's not a true statement. So energy is a tax, right? So the higher the energy cost, the less money out of your pocket, out of your family's budget, out of the overall U.S. economy. We're all trying to make ends meet at Consumer Energy Alliance. When you get about $3.50 a gallon gasoline, our Facebook page starts blowing up. People are starting to make hard choices between milk and a gallon of gasoline, between that vital bacon and gasoline, because a lot of folks at a certain level, but poverty, subsistence, just-in-time income, maybe working two jobs, maybe typically driving a little bit further to get to the job, get to office. All those things come into play, and we need to be sensitive to it. Another point you started to make, electric vehicles, home residential solar, only the rich are buying those items. So we have these market incentives, tax rebates, other things that are allowing a certain part of our economy to invest in electric vehicles when they're able to. But it's not yet ubiquitous around society. That family living that owns their own home but lives at the poverty level, they can't afford yet to add solar panels to their home to help power the electricity at the house. They're not affording EV.
We have to get out of the ivory tower because that family of four living at the poverty subsistence level, they're not thinking about how do I reduce my carbon footprint. They're thinking, how do I put food on my table?
Yep.
They're thinking, how do I get my kids to school? How do I make sure I have enough money to clothe my children and do the things I need to do so we can survive? They're not. And so we think about the global economy and the global environmental movement. The developed countries are saying, nope. You developing countries who are still trying to get clean water and don't have access to adequate plumbing and sanitation services, you can't burn that coal.
Right.
Are you kidding me? That's atrocious.
Yeah.
They're worried about clean water and sanitation. They're not thinking about that. We've got to put this stuff in context and, domestically. So when I was with NACS, we did a survey of consumers every month for 5 years. And we asked them, how do you feel about the economy? To what extent do fuel prices affect your feelings about the economy? Gasoline prices are the bellwether for economic direction. It's on marquees on every corner. You see it. It moves every single day, sometimes a couple times a day. The direction it's moving, not necessarily the number, the direction it's moving affects consumers' mentality and their perception on the economy as a whole, and it affects their decisions on what they're going to spend. As that price goes up, as you mentioned, they start tightening their belts.
I heard
that's
yesterday,
real money.
I heard yesterday a speaker that was talking about every recession. The United States has had 7 recessions since 1920. Every single recession since 1920 has been preceded by increased energy prices.
Yep.
So it is a bellwether. It is that consumer confidence that, I have less money to spend this week. I have less money to spend this month. The first thing that comes out that comes out of your pocket that you have to spend money on is, that nozzle in the car. The difference between to fill up at $50 for a fill up versus $120, you feel that. That has a psychological impact. So maintaining adequate, consistent, reliable, resilient energy supplies, not just in time. I mean, we're increasingly a just in time globe with analytics and everything else, so we understand kind of the market forces. But when you have something like a pandemic, we're building ourselves out of it. We've got to allow supplies to catch up with this quickly increasing demand. It's not the time to restrict, talk about banning, talk about either or between fossil energy or meeting our environmental challenges, all the things you've mentioned. Now's not the time. Never is the time. We can do both. Let's do both. And I think let's continue the innovation. Let's clean it up more. We can do more.
I think the challenge is, the constituency, the population, their attention span isn't that long. And so if you're trying to deliver a message in a headline or in a stump speech, you're trying to simplify it. You're trying to make it simple, because once you start getting the complexity that needs to be there, you start losing the attention of your audience and start losing the punch of your message. I pray and hope beyond all things that that's as far as it goes. And once the policies start being drafted, those responsible are looking at the complexities. They're recognizing that the one-size-fits-all approach to decarbonizing transportation does not exist.
Yeah.
We can electrify a big chunk of the economy and the transportation market, and we can do it very well. And it can be very good for the environment. It can be very good economically. There are certain sectors of the transportation economy that aren't going to lend themselves to electrification very easily. And we can't wait. If we want to decarbonize now, we need to start looking at all the solutions. We got to look at biofuels, renewable fuels. We got to look at hydrogen and natural gas. We got to look at improved diesel engines. We got to look at everything we can look at to keep the economy rolling while we reduce the carbon intensity and our carbon emissions.
Yeah.
It's one size fits all. Simplistic soundbite policies are just they're going to backfire. And what we're going to see is it's not going to be the politicians recognizing it. It's going to be a revolt of the masses going, hold on a second. You just, as you mentioned, you just increased my energy costs by 100%. And my life hasn't gotten any better. You've not made my life more convenient. You haven't made my life more efficient. You've just increased my costs. And that is going to be a rude awakening for those who are not thinking broadly and looking at the complexity of the market.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And you just increasing my costs based on a policy decision that you made, forcing me to make hard decisions and forcing my life in a less desirable way. It ultimately comes back to the voter and understanding that we can meet the energy challenges. You talked about, continuing to move forward. We're already proving that we can do it. It's a fact. We're doing it. It's that great untold story we talked about. We are meeting our environmental challenges, and we've shown we can meet our energy needs at the same time. Hopefully this is a short-term blip, right? But we can also send signals to the market where we're putting a pause on oil and gas leasing offshore and onshore in the United States. We're saying no to pipelines. Ultimately, when we get down to it, we're going to need more pipelines for CO2 injection when we get carbon capture technology to catch up with everything else. So I agree that politics by soundbite, politics by trying to scare voters.
Yeah.
I love my friends on kind of in the environmental community that continue to press the envelope for us to do a better job. But I am sometimes disappointed at some of the rhetoric that says, unless you ban natural gas, your children are at risk, or something like that. I mean, it's an extreme example. That rhetoric is not helpful for anyone.
It shuts the door. It shuts the door on innovation.
Yeah, and a conversation. We've got to be coming together to find shared common ground and shared solutions. And the fact of the matter is, we actually are doing a much better job than some want us to believe. And the more that we can have conversations like this that talk about the environmental performance, talk about the energy challenges, that's for the good of the citizenry, for the good of consumers everywhere.
Yeah. I'm hopeful that at some point we can start pounding our chest going, look, we're showing you how it can be done. Yeah. I'm also hopeful that the commentary back to the energy producing industry is not, we don't want your product, we're going to ban your product. It's more like, how can we help you reduce the environmental impact of your product?
Yep.
How can we work together to make significant improvements in our environmental performance while delivering affordable energy to the people who need it, when they need it, where they need it, on terms that they need it? It's not rocket science. It really is not. It just takes a little bit of conviction, a little bit of acceptance that we have to all be in this together. And quite frankly, I've been in the fuel industry for a long time. And I see the headlines that, all they care about are their fat cat lobbyists and their investors, and they don't care about the environment. That is malarkey, to use a term out of the Big Bang Theory, because they all care. Everybody cares about the environment.
Yeah.
They also care about making sure their customers are taken care of. And there's the balance. So, David, if people want to learn more about CEA, how can they find out what Consumer Energy Alliance is doing?
The easy way is the website consumerenergyalliance.org. We just came out, if you click on news, once you get to the website, we just came out with a report on the implications for consumers and small businesses from higher energy prices this winter. What EIA, the Department of Energy economic arm, what they predict. So we've extrapolated some data. It's pretty alarming. We're going to get hit with some price increases, so be prepared. But consumerenergyalliance.org, and John, great working with you. You're a wonderful board member, and appreciate the time on the show.
Well, David, it's a great organization, and so all you guys back home, thank you for tuning in. Please make your voices heard. Talk to your elected officials. I'm not a lobbyist anymore, but the only way we're going to promote change is to engage with our government officials and help them understand the reality of what we're experiencing on the ground. So thanks for tuning in to Carpool Chats, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care, guys.